The morning sky of Loomis Prime glowed with soft purple light as three suns rose above the crystal forests. Ambassador Nira stood at the great window of the council chamber, her four delicate arms clasped together in worry. Her flower-like face showed deep concern as she watched the peaceful city below. "The reports are getting worse," said Councillor Tam, his voice barely a whisper. He was old, even for their long-lived species, and his petals had turned silver with age. "3 more colonies have fallen to the Vorthans this week." Nira turned from the window. Her large, gentle eyes reflected the fear that all Kalari felt these days. "How many does that make?" 17 worlds in 2 months, Tam replied, checking his data pad with shaking hands. "They take everything. Resources, technology, sometimes even the people as slaves." The Kalari had never known war. Their species had evolved on Loomis Prime, over millions of years without conflict. They were plant-like beings who gained energy from their suns and nutrients from their crystal-rich soil. Violence was not just foreign to them. It was impossible. Their minds simply could not process the idea of deliberately hurting another intelligent being. "What do our allies say?" Nira asked, though she already knew the answer. Tam's petals drooped. The Therian Republic sent 2 old fighter ships. The Silicon Collective offered some defense drones. The others... He paused. "The others are too scared of Vorthan revenge." Nira walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display showed their galaxy. Red markers indicated Vorthan-controlled systems, spreading like a disease across the outer rim. The pattern was clear. They were moving toward the core worlds, toward Loomis Prime itself. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Their main fleet was spotted at the Zarian system yesterday," Tam said quietly. "At their current speed, they will reach us in 7 days." 7 days. Nira felt her limbs grow weak. The Vorthans were a nightmare species, tall, armored beings who lived for conquest. They had evolved on a harsh world of constant warfare, and they brought that violence with them wherever they went. Their ships were massive, their weapons terrible, and they showed no mercy to those who opposed them. "We must send the distress call," Nira said finally. The council chamber fell silent. A distress call was the last resort, a plea sent across the galaxy begging for help from any species willing to fight. It was an admission that they could not defend themselves. "To whom?" asked Councillor Vera, her young voice filled with desperation. "Who in the galaxy has ships strong enough to face the Vorthans? Who would risk their own worlds for us?" Nira had no answer. She moved to the communication console at the center of the room. The device was made of living crystal that responded to her thoughts. With trembling hands, she activated the galactic transmission array. "This is Ambassador Nira of the Kalari Council, speaking for all inhabitants of Loomis Prime," she began, her voice carrying across space to every civilized world in the galaxy. "We send this plea to any species capable of military assistance. The Vorthan Empire approaches our world with intent to conquer and destroy. We are a peaceful people with no weapons, no soldiers, no way to defend ourselves." She paused, gathering strength for the next words. Around her, the council members watched in silence. Outside, the crystal city of their ancestors gleamed in the triple sunlight, beautiful and defenseless. "We have 7 days before their fleet arrives. If there is anyone in the galaxy who stands against the destruction of innocent worlds, please hear our call. We offer whatever we have in return for protection. Please. We do not want to die." The transmission ended. The chamber remained quiet except for the soft humming of the crystal walls. Nira slumped into her chair, exhausted by the effort of asking strangers to die for their world. The responses began within hours. Most were rejections, polite but firm refusals from species who feared Vorthan retaliation. A few offered small assistance, outdated ships, defensive systems, token forces that would make little difference against the approaching armada. By the 4th day, hope was fading. The Therian fighters had arrived, 2 ancient vessels that would be destroyed in minutes against Vorthon dreadnoughts. The Silicon drones were better, but there were only 50 of them. Against a fleet of 300 Vorthon warships, Their efforts would be meaningless. Perhaps we should consider surrender, suggested Counselor Kell during the evening session. His words brought gasps from the younger council members, but several elders nodded sadly. What would surrender mean? Asked Vera. Tam consulted his files. Based on previous conquests, they would strip mine our crystal forests for rare minerals. Our people would be relocated to work camps or sold as slaves to other systems. Our culture, our cities, our entire way of life would be erased within a year. The room fell silent again. Death seemed preferable to such a fate, but the Kalari could not even choose to fight and die with honor. They were simply not capable of violence. On the 5th day, as the first Forthon scout ships appeared at the edge of their system, an unexpected transmission arrived. It came from a sector of space that galactic charts marked as uninhabitable deathworlds, places where the planets were so hostile that intelligent life was considered impossible. The message was short and transmitted on old-style radio frequencies that most advanced species had abandoned centuries ago. The voice was strange, not the musical tones of the Kalari or the harmonic resonances of other civilized species, but something rough and primitive. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Force," the voice said. "We received your distress call. Earth is sending a fleet. Hold your position and maintain hope. Help is coming." Nira stared at the communication console in confusion. Terran? Earth? What species is this? Tam was already searching the galactic databases. After several minutes, he looked up with a puzzled expression. "I can find no record of any species called Terrans, or any world called Earth. The transmission came from the Orion sector. That entire region is classified as uninhabitable deathworlds." "Deathworlds?" Vera asked. "Planets with extreme gravity, toxic atmospheres, temperature variations that would kill most life forms, dangerous weather patterns, hostile flora and fauna," Tam explained. "The Galactic Survey classified them as Class 12 hazard zones. Nothing intelligent could evolve in such places." Counselor Kell shook his head. "It must be an automated response from some ancient probe. Perhaps a long-dead civilization left it there centuries ago." But Nira felt something different as she listened to the transmission again. There had been something in that rough voice. Determination, confidence, perhaps even anger at their situation. It did not sound like a machine. "What if it is real?" she asked quietly. "What if there really is a species out there that survived on deathworlds?" The council exchanged uncertain glances. The idea seemed impossible, but their situation was desperate enough to grasp at any hope. "If such beings existed," Tam said slowly, "and if they somehow developed space travel despite living in such hostile conditions, what would they be like?" Nobody answered. The question was too frightening to consider. On the 6th day, long-range sensors detected the main Vorthan fleet entering their system. 300 massive warships, each one capable of destroying their entire world. Commander Vex, the Vorthan leader, sent his own transmission, a demand for immediate surrender or total annihilation. Nira stood again at the great window, watching her people go about their daily lives below. Children played in the crystal gardens, their laughter carried on the warm breeze. Artists created beautiful sculptures that would stand for thousands of years. Scholars debated philosophy and mathematics in the great libraries. All of it would be gone in 24 hours unless the mysterious Terrans were real. Unless help was really coming from the deathworlds of the galaxy. As the three suns set on what might be their final day of freedom, Nira made a choice that would change everything. She activated the planetary defense shields, not because they would stop the Vorthans, but because they would buy time. Time for miracles. Time for the unknown beings from the deathworlds to prove they were more than just legends. Time for humanity to show the galaxy what survivors looked like. The alarm crystals throughout Loomis Prime began singing at dawn on the 7th day. Their high musical notes carried a message that made every Kalari stop what they were doing and look up at the sky with wonder and fear. "Unknown ships detected at system edge," announced the automated voice from the Planetary Defense Center. "Configuration unknown. Species unknown. Intent unknown." Ambassador Nira rushed from her sleep chamber to the council building, her forearms moving quickly as she tried to dress herself while running. Around her, other Kalari were emerging from their crystal homes, their flower-like faces turned upward toward the stars they could not see in the daylight. The council chamber was already full of activity when she arrived. Counselor Tam stood at the main display, his old hands shaking as he adjusted the controls. The holographic image showed their solar system with new dots of light at the very edge, ships that had not been there an hour ago. "How many?" Nira asked, trying to catch her breath. 12 vessels, Tam replied. They appeared suddenly, as if they came out of faster-than-light travel, but the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Counselor Vera was monitoring the communication channels. They're not responding to standard galactic greeting protocols. Wait. She pressed her hand to her ear. I'm getting something on the old radio frequencies. The rough voice from the day before filled the chamber again, but this time it was live. Kalari Council, this is Captain Reed of the Terran defense ship Valkyrie. We are here in response to your distress call. Request permission to establish communication link. The council members looked at each other in amazement. The mysterious Terrans were real and they had actually come to help. This is Ambassador Nira, she replied, her voice trembling with hope and fear. We grant permission for communication. Thank you for answering our call. Understood. Switching to visual communication in 30 seconds. Fair warning. We may look different from what you're used to. The main display flickered and changed. Suddenly, the council chamber was looking at the bridge of an alien starship. The room was dark, lit by red lights that would have hurt Kalari eyes if they had been brighter. Metal surfaces reflected the glow, and everything looked hard and angular, so different from the soft, curved crystal architecture of their world. Then the being stepped into view, and several council members gasped. Captain Reed was clearly a predator. He stood on 2 legs like the Kalari, but that was where the similarity ended. His skin was pale and covered in what looked like artificial materials. Clothing, Nira realized. His eyes faced forward like a hunter's, not to the sides like prey animals. When he spoke, she could see white teeth that were obviously designed for tearing meat. But strangest of all was his expression. Despite his fearsome appearance, his eyes showed concern and determination. When he looked at them, Nira did not feel like prey being studied by a predator. She felt like someone who was being evaluated for protection. Ambassador Nira, Captain Reed said, his voice surprisingly gentle. I want you to know that we understand your situation. We've analyzed the Vorthon fleet movements, and we're here to help. But I need to ask some questions about your defensive capabilities. Defensive capabilities? Nira repeated, confused by the term. Your military forces, ships, weapons, trained soldiers. What do you have available to work with? The council. Chamber fell silent. Finally, Nira had to give the embarrassing truth. Captain Reed, we have no military forces, we have no weapons. We are a peaceful species. We do not fight. The human's eyebrows moved upward, an expression the Kalari did not understand. No, military at all. How do you handle conflicts with other species? We negotiate. We trade. We find peaceful solutions, Counselor Tam explained. We cannot harm other intelligent beings. Our minds are not constructed for violence. Captain Reed was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, other humans moved around the bridge, and Nira could see that they all had the same predator features. Forward-facing eyes, exposed teeth, lean bodies that looked built for movement and action. I need to understand this clearly, the captain said finally. You have never had wars? Never developed weapons? Never trained soldiers? Never, Nira confirmed. We cannot even comprehend why intelligent beings would want to hurt each other. When we first heard about the Vorthons, we thought there must be some mistake. How can a species survive if it destroys other species? Another human stepped up beside Captain Reed. This one was smaller with longer hair and softer features, but still clearly a predator. Captain, I'm reading their biology now. They're plant-based life forms. They get energy from their suns and minerals from their soil. They literally have no need to compete for resources. Thank you, Dr. Mills. Reed said. Then he looked back at the Kalari. Ambassador, I need to explain something about humans. We come from what you would call a death world. On our planet, everything is trying to kill everything else. We evolved as hunters, and we learned to fight because if we didn't fight, we died. The concept was so alien that Nira felt dizzy trying to understand it. Your own planet tries to kill you? Storms that can level cities, temperature changes that go from freezing to burning, predators with claws and teeth, diseases, poisonous, plants, earthquakes, floods. Our world taught us to be survivors. How terrible, whispered Counselor Vera. How do you maintain peace among your own people? Captain Reed smiled, and for the first time the expression did not look frightening to Nira. We learned that the only way to survive on a death world is to work together. We protect each other. And when we see other species being threatened by bullies like the Vorthons, we protect them too. You would risk your lives for beings you have never met? Tam asked in amazement. Where we come from, if you don't stand up for those who can't defend themselves, you're not worthy of calling yourself human. The communication was interrupted by an urgent beeping sound. Another human, this one wearing different clothing, approached. Captain Reed quickly. Captain, we have movement from the Vorthon fleet. They're changing course toward our position. Reed nodded. Time to intercept? 4 hours at current speed. The captain looked back at the Kalari. Ambassador, we need to move our ships into defensive positions. I'm going to have Lieutenant Torres take some small craft and scout the enemy fleet. But I want you to understand something. We're not here to conquer or control your world. We're here to help you stay free. Why? Nira asked. What do you gain from helping us? Captain Reed was quiet for a moment, then answered in a way that would become famous throughout the galaxy in the years to come. Because it's the right thing to do. And because someone has to. The communication link shifted to show Lieutenant Torres, a younger human with quick eyes and confident movements. Ambassador, I'm taking a reconnaissance team to study the Vorthon ships. We need to know their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. Can you provide us with any information about their previous attacks? Counselor Tam quickly transmitted data files. These are reports from the colonies they destroyed. But I must warn you, the Vorthon ships are enormous. Each one is larger than our biggest space stations. Size isn't everything, Torres replied, with a grin that showed those predator teeth. We've learned a few things about fighting bigger opponents. As the humans prepared for battle, Nira found herself studying them with fascination. They moved with purpose and coordination, like a group mind made of individual parts. They did not seem afraid of the approaching Vorthon fleet, despite being outnumbered 25-1. Captain Reed, she called out, are you certain you can protect us? The Vorthons have never been defeated. The human captain turned back to face her, and his eyes held something that the Kalari had never seen before. The quiet confidence of a species that had survived everything the universe could throw at them. Ambassador, the Vorthons have never faced humans before. They're about to learn why we're the only species that calls Deathworlds home. The communication link ended, leaving the Kalari Council in stunned silence. Outside their crystal walls, the three suns continued their eternal dance across the sky. But something had changed in the galaxy that day. For the first time in their history, the gentle Kalari had allies who were willing to fight, and those allies had teeth. Lieutenant Torres pressed herself against the cold metal wall of the asteroid as the massive Vorthon dreadnought passed overhead. The ship was so large that it blocked out the stars, its dark hull covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities. Through her helmet's visor, she could see the glowing symbols that marked it as Commander Vex's flagship. Eagle 1 to Nest, she whispered into her radio. I'm getting a close look at their command ship. It's bigger than our intelligence report suggested. Captain Reed's voice crackled back through the communication system. How big are we talking, Torres? About 3 kilometers long, maybe half that wide. I count at least 200 weapon ports on just the side I can see. She adjusted her position to get a better view. But Captain, they're flying in a straight line formation. No scouts, no flanking ships. They're moving like they expect no resistance at all. Copy that. Any sign of defensive maneuvers? Torres. watched as the rest of the Vorthon fleet followed their flagship in a perfect column. Each ship was identical in design, massive, angular, bristling with weapons but lacking any form of protective escort pattern. Negative, Captain. They're flying like they're in a parade, not going to battle. Understood. Return to base. We have work to do. Back on the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Reed studied the tactical display with his senior officers. The Vorthon fleet was indeed impressive, 300 ships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. But their formation showed something important about their tactics. They've never faced real resistance, said Commander Black, the ship's tactical officer. Look at this formation. It's designed to intimidate, not to fight. Dr. Mills, who had been studying the reconnaissance data, looked up from her console. I've been analyzing their previous battles. Every species they've conquered has either surrendered immediately or offered only token resistance. They've never fought anyone who actually knows how to wage war. What about their individual ship capabilities? Reed asked. Powerful energy, weapons, heavy armor, good shields, Black replied. But they're big and slow. They're built to overwhelm weak opponents, not to engage in tactical combat. Reed nodded slowly. They're bullies. They're used to picking on species that can't fight. Back, he turned to his communication officer. Open a channel to all ships. Battle formation Alpha 7. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. The 12 human ships spread out among the asteroid field between the Vorthons and Loomis Prime. To anyone watching from a distance, it would seem like a hopeless situation. A dozen small vessels against 300 massive warships. But the humans had learned something important during their evolution on Earth. Sometimes the smaller predator wins by being smarter, faster, and more vicious than the larger one. Commander Vex sat on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with amusement. The mysterious ships that had appeared in the system were laughably small compared to his mighty fleet. Each of his dreadnoughts was 50 times larger than the biggest enemy vessel. Commander, his weapons officer reported, the unknown ships are taking positions in the asteroid field. Hiding behind rocks like frightened children, Vex laughed. Open a communication channel. Let's see what these fools have to say before we destroy them. The view screen activated, showing the bridge of the lead human ship. Vex studied the alien being that appeared, bipedal like many species, but with an unsettling appearance. The creature's eyes faced forward like a predator's, and there was something in its expression that Vex found disturbing. I am Commander Vex of the Vorthon Empire, he announced in his most intimidating voice. You are interfering with our rightful conquest of this system. You have 30 seconds to withdraw or be destroyed. The human captain looked directly at him without any sign of fear. This is Captain Reed of the Terran Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your fleet, or we will demonstrate why humans don't make good prey. Vex blinked in surprise. No one had ever spoken to him with such casual confidence. Did you say humans? I have never heard of this species. Are you aware that you are outnumbered 25-1? I'm aware, Reed replied calmly. Are you aware that you've never fought a species that evolved on a death world? Death world? Vex's voice carried a note of uncertainty. What is a death world? Reed smiled, showing his white teeth. A planet where everything tries to kill you every single day. Where you learn to be a hunter or you die. Where you discover that the most dangerous creature on the planet is the one that doesn't look dangerous at all. The communication ended abruptly. Vex stared at the blank screen, feeling an emotion he had not experienced in years. Doubt. But his pride quickly overcame his uncertainty. No matter what these humans claimed, they were still vastly outnumbered. Sidor. Ships, attack formation, he ordered. Show these Deathworld creatures what real power looks like. The Vorthon fleet moved forward in their traditional overwhelming assault pattern. Energy weapons charged, shields at maximum power. Every ship focused on the small cluster of human vessels hiding in the asteroid field. It was a formation that had conquered 17 worlds without a single defeat. But as they approached the Yao asteroid, something unexpected happened. The human ships disappeared. Where did they go? Vex demanded. His sensor officer frantically worked at his console. They were there a moment ago, Commander. Our sensors show nothing but empty space. Ships don't just vanish. Find them. The answer came in the form of weapons, fire from directly above the Vorthan formation. Kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the rear ships of the fleet. The Vorthan shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were useless against what amounted to hypervelocity bullets. Above us, the weapons officer shouted. They're using the asteroid's gravity wells to mask their approach. Vex watched in shock as 3 of his ships erupted in explosions. The humans had somehow used the asteroid field itself as cover, moving through spaces that should have been impossible to navigate. Return fire, he ordered. The Vorthan ships turned their massive energy weapons toward the attacking humans, but the small ships were already moving. They darted between asteroids, using the rocky debris as shields while launching coordinated attacks on the larger vessels. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered, reported the tactical officer. They're using hit-and-run tactics, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. In Vex's experience, fleets faced each other in open space and traded fire until the weaker side was destroyed. But the humans were fighting like hunters stalking prey. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Reed watched the battle unfold, with grim satisfaction. Target their command ship's sensor array, he ordered. Blind them first, then we'll show them what pack hunters can do. The human ships coordinated their attacks with precision that seemed almost telepathic. They moved in patterns that confused the Vorthan targeting systems, struck at weak points the enemy didn't know they had, and used the environment itself as a weapon. Sergeant Blake, leading a boarding party on the assault ship Phoenix, broke through the hull of a Vorthan cruiser using nothing more than shaped charges and determination. The Vorthans inside, used to operating in the safety of their ship's interior, were unprepared for close combat against beings who had evolved from persistence hunters. "They're inside our ships," came the panicked reports from multiple Vorthan vessels. "How are they getting through our hulls?" The answer was simple. Humans were smaller, more flexible, and far more determined than the Vorthans had ever imagined. They found ways into the massive ships through maintenance ports, damaged sections, and spaces that the larger aliens couldn't even fit through. Commander Vex watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Ships were being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their shields. His crews were reporting boarding parties that seemed to appear from nowhere, and worst of all, the humans were doing it with only 12 ships. "Retreat," he finally ordered. "All ships retreat to safe distance." But the humans didn't let them run. They pursued the fleeing Vorthans like wolves chasing wounded prey, picking off the slower ships and forcing the survivors to scatter in panic. On Loomis Prime, Ambassador Nira and the Council watched the battle through their long-range sensors. They could barely believe what they were seeing. The mighty Vorthan fleet, which had conquered 17 worlds, was being destroyed by a handful of ships from a species they had never heard of. "How are they doing this?" Counselor Vera asked in amazement. "They fight like their world taught them to," Nira replied, remembering Captain Reed's words. "They are survivors, and now they are teaching the galaxy what that means." In space, the battle was already over. The Vorthan fleet, or what remained of it, fled toward the edge of the system. They had learned a lesson that would spread throughout the galaxy in the coming days. Deathworld predators were not to be underestimated, and humans had just announced their presence to the universe. The crystal forests of Loomis Prime had never known the sound of warfare. For millions of years, the only noises in the peaceful groves were the gentle chiming of wind through crystal branches and the soft songs of the Kalari as they tended their gardens. But now, the harsh crack of weapons fire echoed between the translucent trees. Major Cross crouched behind a cluster of blue crystals, watching through his scope as Vorthan soldiers moved through the forest below. The enemy troops were massive. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick armor that made them look like walking tanks. They moved slowly but deliberately, their heavy weapons sweeping back and forth as they searched for targets. "Phoenix. Leader to all units," Cross spoke quietly into his radio. "I count 40 Vorthans moving toward the civilian shelters. They're using the main crystal path, just like we expected." The voice of Private Williams crackled back from somewhere in the forest. "Roger that, Major. Wolfpack 2 is in position. On their left flank. These big guys really don't know how to move quietly, do they?" Cross allowed himself a small smile. The Vorthons might be larger and more heavily armed, but they were making every mistake that predators learn to avoid on Earth. They traveled in straight lines, made noise, and bunched together in groups that made perfect targets. "Remember the mission," Cross reminded his troops. "Protect the civilians. The Kalari are completely defenseless, so we are all that stands between them and slavery." 3 hours earlier, after the space battle had scattered most of the Vorthon, Fleet Commander Vex had played his final card. Instead of retreating completely, he had launched ground forces toward Loomis Prime's surface. If he couldn't take the system by force, he would capture the population and sell them as slaves to recover his losses. The Kalari had been horrified by the very concept. Ambassador Nira had actually fainted when Major Cross explained what the Vorthons intended to do with captured civilians. The idea that intelligent beings would deliberately cause suffering to others was beyond their ability to comprehend. "We cannot fight them," Counselor Tam had said, his forearms shaking with distress. "We cannot even think about hurting another being. It is impossible for us." "Then don't think about it," Cross had replied. "Leave the fighting to us. Just tell us where your people are hiding, and we'll make sure the Vorthons never reach them." Now, as the human soldiers prepared their ambush, the cultural differences between the species became even more apparent. The Kalari hiding in their crystal shelters could only watch and hope, while the humans moved through the forest like ghosts, setting up a trap that would have made their wolf ancestors proud. "Target the leader first," Cross ordered. "Take out their command structure and the rest will panic." Below them, General Krex led the Vorthon ground assault with confidence. His intelligence reports had described the Kalari as weak, plant-like beings with no military capability. The few small ships that had damaged the fleet in space must have been mercenaries, probably gone now that the real fighting was about to begin. "Sir," his lieutenant reported, "we're detecting Kalari life signs in the crystal formations ahead. Approximately 200 civilians. Excellent," Krex growled. "Capture them all. The slave markets will pay well for exotic specimens." He raised his voice to address his troops. "Remember, we want them alive but compliant. A few casualties will make the others more cooperative." The words reached the human soldiers through their translation devices, and Cross felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. He had fought in many battles, against many enemies, but there was something special about his hatred for beings who threatened innocence. "All units weapons free," he whispered into his radio. "Show them why Earth's children don't make good prey." The attack began with silence. The first Vorthon soldier simply disappeared from the rear of the formation, pulled into the crystal underbrush without making a sound. The second one turned to look for his missing comrade and found a human knife between his armor plates. By the time General Krex realized they were under attack, half his force was already down. "Contact front," he shouted, swinging his massive weapon toward the crystal trees. "Enemy forces in the forest." But there was nothing to shoot at. The humans moved like shadows, appearing just long enough to strike before vanishing back into cover. They used the crystal formations themselves as weapons, causing resonances that disrupted Vorthon communications and disoriented their heavy troops. Private Williams and his squad demonstrated the pack-hunting behavior that had made humans the apex predators of Earth. They worked together without needing to speak, communicating through hand signals and shared instincts. One would draw the enemy's attention while others struck from unexpected angles. "Where are they?" a Vorthon soldier screamed, spinning in circles as his comrades fell around him. "How many are there?" The answer was 12 human soldiers against 40 Vorthon troops. But in the crystal forest, numbers meant less than understanding the terrain, moving silently, and thinking like a predator instead of like a conqueror. Sergeant Blake appeared behind a cluster of purple crystals, his rifle spitting precise bursts of fire that found the weak points in Vorthon armor. When they turned to face him, he was already gone and Corporal Stone was attacking from their other side. "They're everywhere," the Vorthons reported in panic. "We can't get a clear shot." But the humans could. They had spent their entire evolution learning to hunt creatures larger and stronger than themselves. They used patience, coordination, and the environment itself to even the odds. General Krex found himself alone, his soldiers either dead or scattered in panic through the crystal forest. His armor was damaged, his weapon nearly out of power, and he could hear the soft footsteps of pursuers getting closer. Then he saw his chance. Through the crystal trees, he spotted a group of Kalari civilians who had emerged from their shelter to help the wounded. The plant-like beings were tending to injured humans with their healing abilities, their flower-like faces showing nothing but compassion and concern. Perfect, Krex muttered, raising his weapon. If I can't have them as slaves, I'll use them as hostages. He stepped into the clearing, his massive form towering over the gentle Kalari. "Human soldiers!" he shouted. "Show yourselves or these civilians die." The Kalari looked up at him with confusion rather than fear. They had never seen hatred before, never experienced the threat of deliberate violence. Ambassador Nira was among them, her forearms cradling a wounded human soldier with maternal care. "Please," she said softly to the Vorthon general. "This human is badly hurt. Let me help him." Krex stared at her in disbelief. "You would help your own protectors? These predators who fight and kill?" "They are fighting to protect us," Nira replied, simply. "How could we not help them in return?" The general raised his weapon, preparing to fire at the defenseless civilians, but as his finger touched the trigger, he felt something cold press against the back of his neck. "I wouldn't," said Major Cross's voice, deadly quiet. The human had appeared from nowhere, moving through the crystal forest like a ghost. His weapon was aimed at the exact spot where Krex's armor was weakest. "You're outnumbered," Krex snarled. "One human against a Vorthon warrior." "One human defending innocence," Cross corrected. "That's all it takes." Around the clearing, other human soldiers emerged from their hiding places. They had been there all along, watching, waiting for the Vorthon to reveal himself. Now they stood in a perfect circle, their weapons trained on the general. "You want to know what a death world teaches you?" Cross asked conversationally. "It teaches you that the most dangerous creature isn't always the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes it's the one that's protecting something it cares about." General Krex looked around at the humans surrounding him. Each one was smaller than him, weaker than him, but there was something in their eyes that made his blood run cold. These weren't just soldiers. They were pack hunters who had found someone threatening their protected ones. "Surrender," Cross said simply. "Your fleet is scattered, your troops are defeated, and you're surrounded. It's over." Krex dropped his weapon. As the humans secured him, he found himself looking at the Kalari civilians, who were still tending to wounded soldiers. With gentle care, the sight confused him more than anything else in the battle. "Why do they help you?" he asked Cross. "You are predators. They should fear you." Major Cross glanced over at Ambassador Nira, who was using her natural healing abilities to close a soldier's wounds. The Kalari looked up and gave him a smile that was pure gratitude and trust. "Because they understand something that bullies like you never will," Cross replied. "The difference between a predator and a protector isn't what they're capable of doing, it's what they choose to do with that capability." As the last Vorthon prisoners were secured and the wounded were cared for, the crystal forest began to return to its natural peace. But something had changed on Loomis Prime that day. The gentle Kalari had learned that not all predators were evil, and the humans had found a species worth protecting. The galaxy would never be the same. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from 300 species sat in their floating chairs, watching the holographic display that showed the aftermath of the Battle of Loomis Prime. Ships burning in space. Vorthon prisoners being treated with unexpected mercy by their human captors. And most shocking of all, footage of the gentle Kalari tending to wounded human soldiers with the same care they would show their own children. Chancellor Koth of the Rigel Consortium cleared his throat, breaking the silence. His reptilian features showed the confusion that most of the galaxy felt. "Ambassador Nira of the Kalari, please explain to the Council what exactly happened in your system." Ambassador Nira rose gracefully from her crystal chair, her four arms folded in the traditional gesture of respect. Around her, the other representatives studied her with new interest. The Kalari had never participated in council meetings before. They were too peaceful, too gentle for the rough politics of galactic governance. Honored council members, she began, her musical voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 7 days ago, our world faced destruction by the Vorthan Empire. We sent out a distress call expecting little response. What we received changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. The holographic display shifted to show the human fleet arriving at Loomis Prime. The ships looked primitive compared to most galactic technology. Angular, brutal things that seemed designed more for survival than exploration. The humans came from what our star charts call the Deathworlds, Nira continued. Planets so hostile that we believed no intelligent life could exist there. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. The idea of intelligent life evolving on Deathworlds challenged everything galactic science had taught for thousands of years. Chancellor Koth leaned forward in his chair. And these humans, they defeated the entire Vorthan fleet? 300 ships destroyed. By 12, not destroyed, Nira corrected gently. Defeated. The humans could have eliminated every Vorthan ship, but they chose mercy. They allowed the survivors to retreat after their commander surrendered. This caused an even greater stir among the council. In galactic warfare, complete destruction of the enemy was the norm. The concept of mercy toward defeated foes was almost unknown. Dr. Kim stepped forward from the human delegation. She was small compared to most of the galactic representatives, but her presence commanded attention. Honored Council, I am Dr. Kim, of the Terran Scientific Collective. I have prepared a report on human evolution that may explain our capabilities. The display changed to show Earth, a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful from space. But as the image zoomed closer, the reality became clear. Massive storms swept across the continents. Volcanoes erupted, spewing ash into the atmosphere. Ice sheets advanced and retreated with each climate cycle. Earth is what we classify as a Class 12 death world, Dr. Kim explained. Extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, constant geological activity. Most species would consider it uninhabitable. How did your people survive? Asked Representative Zephyr of the Cloud Dancers, her gaseous form shimmering with curiosity. We became cooperative predators, Dr. Kim replied. We hunt in packs, use tools as weapons, and adapt to any environment. But most importantly, we learned that survival depends on protecting the group. A human alone dies quickly on Earth. Humans, working together, can survive anything. The display showed images of human cities, farms, and families. Despite their predatory appearance, the beings in the images clearly cared for each other. Children played safely while adults worked together on complex tasks. They protect their young, observed Elder Moss of the Ancient Forest Collective. Like many species. But these images suggest something more. Humans protect everyone they consider part of their pack, Nira said softly. When they came to our world, they adopted us. They fought for us as if we were their own children. Captain Reed, representing the Terran Defense Force, stood to address the council. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate costumes of other delegates, but his presence filled the room. Honored representatives, he said in his rough human voice. My people have a saying, the strong must protect the weak, or strength, has no meaning. We came to Loomis Prime because someone called for help. That's what humans do. But what do you gain from this? Demanded Administrator Quill of the Trade Federation. What resources do you want? What territory do you claim? Reed looked genuinely confused by the question. Gain? We gain the knowledge that peaceful beings like the Kalari can continue to exist. We gain allies who can teach us about art, philosophy, and beauty. What more do we need? The council members exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Every species in galactic history had expanded for resources, territory, or power. The humans seemed to be expanding for the purpose of protecting others. What about the Vorthan prisoners? Asked Marshal Drex of the War Worlds. Traditionally, defeated enemies are enslaved or executed. They're being held in comfortable facilities on Loomis Prime, Reed replied. We're working with their government to arrange prisoner exchanges and peace negotiations. Peace negotiations? Drex laughed harshly. The Vorthans understand only strength? Then we'll show them strength, Reed said quietly. But we'll also show them that strength can be used to build instead of destroy. The holographic display shifted to show the current situation throughout the galaxy. The defeat of the Vorthons had sent shockwaves through every aggressive empire. Species that had been planning invasions were suddenly reconsidering their strategies. 3. Major expansion fleets have turned back from their targets, reported Intelligence Chief Vale. The Crimson Horde has requested a peace summit. Even the Iron Legion is asking for diplomatic contact with the humans. Chancellor Koth studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. A single battle has changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Not the battle, Nira corrected. The aftermath. The galaxy has learned that there is a species that will answer distress calls, that will fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves, that will show mercy to defeated enemies. Dr. Kim activated another display showing communication logs. We have received 43 distress calls in the past week. Peaceful species that have been threatened for years are finally asking for help. And you will answer them all? Asked Chancellor Koth. Captain Reed nodded firmly. Everyone we can reach in time. But why? Representative Zephyr asked again. Your world is far from these conflicts. You could ignore them and live in peace. Reed was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. Finally, he spoke words that would be recorded in galactic history. Because peace isn't something you have. Peace is something you make. And if good beings don't stand up to bullies, then the bullies win. The council session continued for hours, but the real decisions were being made in smaller meetings throughout the galactic capital. Species that had never spoken to each other before were forming alliances. Peaceful worlds were coordinating their calls for help. And aggressive empires were discovering that conquest was no longer profitable when humans might show up to oppose them. 3 months later, Ambassador Nira stood once again at the great window of the council chamber on Loomis Prime. But this time, she was not alone. Captain Reed stood beside her, pointing out the human ships that now patrolled the system alongside. Kalari vessels. The crystal gardens are more beautiful than ever, Reed observed. Your people have a gift for creating beauty, and your people have a gift for protecting it, Nira replied. Together we are stronger than either species could be alone. Through the window, they could see human children playing with young Kalari in the crystal groves. The human children were learning to appreciate beauty and harmony, while the Kalari young were learning that strength could be gentle and protective. Captain, Nira said thoughtfully, what will happen when the galaxy is at peace, when there are no more distress calls to answer? Reed smiled, an expression that no longer seemed frightening to the Kalari. Then we'll find other ways to help. Maybe we'll explore new sectors, looking for species that need friends instead of enemies. Maybe we'll learn to create beauty like your people do. And if new threats arise, if other aggressive species emerge, then the galaxy will know what to do, Reed replied confidently. They'll send out a distress call, and somewhere someone will answer, "This is the Terran Defense Force, we're on our way." As the 3 suns set over Loomis Prime, their light reflected off the crystal spires and the metal hulls of human ships. 2 species, as different as predator and prey, had found a way to work together. And in doing so, they had changed the entire galaxy. The age of conquest was ending. The age of protection had begun. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that humans had learned on their death world. The strong must protect the weak, or strength has no meaning at all. The desert wind howled across the Nevada plains as Dr. Elena Martinez climbed the metal stairs to the observation deck. It was 3:47 a.m., and the global communications array stretched before her like a field of giant metal flowers. Each dish pointed toward different corners of the universe. She had been the lead scientist here for 8 years, listening to the endless whispers of space, hoping to catch something that would change everything. Tonight, she would get her wish. "Dr. Martinez, you need to see this right now," called Tom. Bradley, her night shift operator. His voice carried an edge she had never heard before. Tom was calm, steady, the kind of man who stayed cool even when equipment failed during important observations. But now his hands shook as he pointed to the main screen. Elena hurried to the control room, her coffee mug forgotten on the deck railing. The massive display showed wave patterns unlike anything in their database. The signal was strong, impossibly strong, and it was coming from the direction of the Vega system. "How long has this been coming in?" she asked, settling into her chair. "Started about 20 minutes ago. At first I thought it was interference from a satellite, but look at this structure." Tom highlighted sections of the transmission. "This isn't random noise, there's a pattern here, something deliberate." Elena studied the data streaming across multiple monitors. Her heart began to race. After decades of searching, after countless false alarms and dead ends, this looked like the real thing. But something felt wrong. The signal was too strong, too clear, as if whoever sent it wanted to be heard. "Run it through the translation protocols," she ordered, "and call the team, all of them." Within an hour, the control room buzzed with activity. Dr. James Cooper, their linguistics expert, bent over his computer while engineer Lisa Park worked on cleaning up the signal. Others gathered around workstations, their faces lit by the glow of screens showing humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. "I'm getting structure," Cooper announced. "Mathematical concepts, star charts, and something else. Something big." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. "What kind of something?" Cooper's face went pale. "Technical specifications, weapon designs, and coordinates. Lots of coordinates." The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant wind. Elena walked to Cooper's station and looked at his screen. Symbols filled the display, alien writing that their computers were slowly translating into human language. "This isn't a greeting," she whispered. "No," Cooper agreed. "It's military intelligence. And if I'm reading this right, we weren't supposed to intercept it." The translation took 6 hours. As the alien text became readable, the horror of their discovery grew clear. The signal came from a species calling themselves the Valdari Empire. They had been watching Earth for over 30 years, studying human civilization like scientists observing bacteria in a dish. Elena read the translated documents aloud to her team, her voice steady, despite the fear growing in her chest. "Target, designation, Sol 3, species classification, primitive carbon-based life forms, threat level, minimal, recommendation, complete sterilization of planetary surface before resource extraction." Tom dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but nobody moved to clean it up. "There's more," Cooper said quietly. "Fleet deployment orders, 12 heavy cruisers, departure date 6 months ago. Estimated arrival time at Earth, 18 months from now." Lisa Park stood up slowly. "They're coming here. They're coming to kill us all." Elena continued reading. The Valdari discussed humanity with the same cold interest humans might show when planning to clear out a wasp nest. They debated whether to study human specimens before extermination, or simply burn the entire planet from orbit and move on to harvesting Earth's metals and water. "Listen to this," Elena said, her voice getting stronger. "Commander's log, Valdari, 2nd Fleet. The mammals of Sol 3 show basic tool usage and have achieved primitive spaceflight. However, their technology remains centuries behind ours. They pose no threat to Imperial forces. Standard extermination protocols will be sufficient." Cooper looked up from his screen. "They think we're helpless. They think we're animals," Tom added, anger creeping into his voice. Elena kept reading. The Valdari intelligence reports painted a picture of humanity that was both accurate and completely wrong. Yes, humans were younger on the galactic stage. Yes, their technology was primitive compared to an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. But the aliens had missed something crucial in their decades of observation. They had watched human cities and counted human weapons. They had analyzed human governments and calculated human resources. But they had never seen humanity truly threatened. They had never seen what humans became when faced with extinction. Alert the Global Defense Council, Elena ordered. Emergency protocols highest priority, and get me Admiral Kane on the secure line. As her team scrambled to make contact with Earth's military leadership, Elena stared at the translation still scrolling across her screen. The Valdari had made a simple mistake, the kind that had doomed countless civilizations throughout history. They had confused being peaceful with being weak. Admiral Marcus Kane arrived at the facility before dawn, his helicopter landing in a whirlwind of dust and noise. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars, but his face showed sharp intelligence as Elena briefed him on their discovery. So they've been watching us for 30 years, he said, studying the alien star charts. Learning our weaknesses, planning their attack. Yes, sir. But they made an error. This transmission was meant for their home fleet, not for us. We intercepted their internal military communications. Kane smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. So we know they're coming, we know how many ships, and we know what they think of us. We also know their technology, Lisa added. The signal contains technical specifications, weapon designs, shield frequencies. They sent us a blueprint of their own military systems. Kane studied the translated documents for a long time. When he looked up, his eyes held something that Elena had never seen before, not fear but anticipation. Dr. Martinez, how long do we have? 12 months, maybe 14 if we're lucky. And they think we're helpless animals. Yes, sir. Kane stood up, his decision made. Then we're going to teach them something they've never learned in all their years of conquest. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten the human race. Elena felt something shift in the room, a change in the air like the moment before a storm breaks. The Valdari had been watching humanity for decades, but they had never seen humans prepare for war. They had never witnessed the transformation that occurred when peaceful people realized their children faced extinction. What do you need from us? She asked. Everything. Every detail of their technology, every weakness in their systems, every piece of intelligence in that transmission. We have 12 months to prepare for a war that will determine whether humanity survives or joins the list of civilizations the Valdari have wiped out. Kane paused at the door. Doctor, when the Valdari arrive, they're expecting to find a primitive world full of helpless animals. Instead, they're going to find something they've never encountered in all their years of conquest. What's that, sir? An angry human race that's had a year to prepare for their arrival. As the sun rose over the Nevada desert, Elena looked out at the communication array that had changed everything. The dishes still pointed toward the stars, but now they carried a different purpose. They were no longer just listening to the universe. They were preparing to send a message of their own. 3 weeks after the discovery, the world had changed completely. What started as a secret known only to a few scientists had become humanity's greatest mobilization effort in history. In underground bunkers and hidden facilities across every continent, the human race was waking up to what it truly meant to survive. Dr. James Cooper stood in the newly built research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at alien technology that should have been impossible to understand. But the Valdari had made their first critical mistake when they sent detailed technical specifications in their intercepted message. Now, human scientists were using the aliens' own blueprints against them. The shield generator is almost ready. For testing, announced Dr. Sarah Kim, Cooper's lead engineer. She pointed to a device that looked like a metal flower with crystalline petals. If we're reading their specifications correctly, this should create an energy barrier strong enough to stop their plasma weapons. Cooper nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. For 3 weeks, teams of scientists had worked day and night to decode Valdari technology. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens were advanced, but their technology followed predictable patterns. They had grown comfortable with centuries of easy victories against weaker civilizations. Have you seen the weapons lab? Sarah asked. Cooper followed her down a corridor lined with blast doors. Behind each door, human engineers worked on projects that would have been science fiction a month ago. In one room, Lisa Park supervised the construction of energy cannons based on Valdari designs. In another, teams built armor that could deflect alien weapons, but the most important work was happening in the deepest level of the facility, where Admiral Kane had established the Strategic Planning Center. The command room buzzed with activity. Officers from every nation worked side by side, sharing intelligence and coordinating the largest military buildup in human history. At the center of it all stood Admiral Kane, studying holographic displays that showed Earth's new defenses taking shape. "Admiral, the orbital platforms are ahead of schedule," reported Colonel Sarah Blake, Kane's deputy commander. "We'll have 12 battle stations in position around Earth within 8 months. Kane smiled grimly. "And the fleet construction?" "Shipyards in orbit around Earth and Luna are working around the clock. Captain Alex Torres is overseeing the design process. His first prototype should be ready for testing next week." Kane walked to a large display showing the solar system. Red dots marked the approaching Valdari fleet, still months away but closing the distance steadily. Blue dots showed humanity's growing defenses spreading throughout Earth's orbital space. "What about the reconnaissance program?" Kane asked. "Already underway, sir. We've launched 12 stealth probes toward the approaching fleet. If our understanding of Valdari technology is correct, they won't detect the probes until it's too late." Kane nodded. The probes were one of humanity's first original innovations, combining alien stealth technology with human miniaturization techniques. Each probe was no larger than a basketball, but packed with sensors that could monitor the Valdari fleet from a safe distance. Meanwhile, in the weapons testing facility, engineer Lisa Park watched as technicians prepared to fire humanity's first energy weapon. The cannon looked crude compared to the sleek Valdari designs in their technical files, but human engineering had made crucial improvements. "The Valdari weapons are designed for overwhelming firepower," Lisa explained to her team, "but they assume their targets can't fight back effectively. We've modified the design for rapid firing and improved targeting systems." The test firing lit up the underground chamber with brilliant energy. The beam struck a target made of the same materials the Valdari used for ship armor and punched straight through it. "Perfect," Lisa said with satisfaction. "Their own armor won't protect them from their own weapons technology." Above ground, the world had transformed into a vast military factory. Cities that once produced cars now built spacecraft. Factories that made computers now assembled weapons systems. Every human on Earth understood that the next 12 months would determine whether their species survived. Captain Alex Torres stood in the orbital shipyard above Earth, watching as the first human warship took shape. It was not a beautiful vessel like the exploration ships humanity had dreamed of building. This was a weapon, designed with one purpose: to kill aliens who came to kill humans. "She looks angry," commented Commander David Park, Torres's chief. Engineer Torres nodded. The ship had sharp angles and weapon ports that gave it a predatory appearance. Human designers had combined alien technology with human aesthetics, creating something that looked dangerous even while floating silently in space. "The Valdari ships are built for intimidation," Torres explained. "Large, impressive, designed to make primitive species surrender without fighting. Our ships are built for killing. There's a difference. The ship's main cannon was based on Valdari plasma technology, but human engineers had made it more powerful and accurate. The armor used alien defensive systems, but added human innovations that the Valdari had never considered. Most importantly, the ship was designed to be unpredictable in combat, something the rigid Valdari military doctrine was not prepared to handle." Back at the communications facility in Nevada, Dr. Elena Martinez worked with a different kind of weapon: information. The intercepted Valdari transmissions continued to provide intelligence about alien military tactics, technology, and most importantly, their psychology. "They've never faced serious resistance," Elena reported during the daily briefing with Admiral Kane. "Every species they've encountered either surrendered immediately or was too primitive to mount an effective defense." Kane leaned forward. "What does that tell us about their weaknesses?" "Their military tactics are standardized, almost ritualistic. They expect their enemies to react in predictable ways. When the Valdari arrive at a world, they broadcast surrender, demands wait for submission, then begin extermination procedures. It's been the same pattern for centuries." And they'll expect us to follow the same pattern? Yes, sir. They'll demand our surrender, expect us to panic and beg for mercy, then proceed with standard extermination protocols. They're not prepared for a species that fights back intelligently. Dr. Cooper joined the conversation from his research facility. We've made another breakthrough in understanding their command structure. The Valdari are extremely hierarchical. If we can disrupt their command ships, their entire fleet will struggle to adapt. Kane smiled. Perfect. Continue monitoring their transmissions. I want to know everything about how they think and fight. As weeks passed, the changes on Earth became more dramatic. Children learned about alien threats in school while their parents worked in weapons factories. Every television broadcast included updates on humanity's defensive preparations. The species that had spent decades dreaming of peaceful contact with alien life was rapidly becoming something much more dangerous. General Robert Hayes established training facilities where soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity and use alien weapons technology. The training was harsh, designed to prepare humans for combat against an enemy with superior technology and centuries of military experience. The Valdari are bigger and stronger than humans, Hayes told his trainees. Their weapons are more advanced, and their ships are more powerful. But they've never fought humans before. They don't know about human creativity, human stubbornness, or human fury when our families are threatened. The soldiers trained with captured alien equipment, learning to turn Valdari technology against its creators. They practiced boarding actions on mock-ups of alien ships, using human tactics adapted for alien environments. Meanwhile, scientists worked on projects that would have seemed impossible before the alien threat emerged. Dr. Kim's team perfected personal shield generators that could protect individual soldiers. Lisa Park developed portable weapons that could penetrate Valdari armor. Cooper's linguistics team learned to speak alien languages, preparing for interrogations and psychological warfare. But perhaps the most important development was happening in humanity's collective psychology. The species that had reached for the stars with hope and curiosity was discovering something darker within themselves. The same drive that had led humans to explore and create was now focused on a single goal, making sure that any alien species that threatened human existence would regret that decision. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, looking down at Earth's blue surface. 12 months ago, it had been a peaceful world where humanity's greatest conflicts were economic and political disputes. Now it was becoming something the galaxy had never seen. An entire planet preparing for war. Sir, the first probe has reached the Valdari fleet, reported Colonel Blake. Kane turned to the communication console. What do we see? The images appeared on screen. Massive alien ships moving in perfect formation through space. They were beautiful, in their own way, but Kane saw them as 12 threats to human survival. They're not even trying to hide, he observed. They think we can't detect them. Should we maintain surveillance? Kane nodded. Keep watching them. I want to know everything about their capabilities before they arrive. And Colonel? Yes, sir. Make sure our people 8 months had passed since the alien signal changed everything. Earth no longer looked the same from space. Where once there had been peaceful cities and quiet farmlands, now massive construction projects stretched across every continent. Humanity was reshaping their entire world into a fortress. Captain Alex Torres floated in the command center of humanity's newest orbital shipyard, watching the final assembly of their 10th warship. The vessel was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that combined alien technology with human engineering. But what made Torres smile was not the ship's firepower. It was the fact that they had built 10 ships in 8 months, something the Valdari intelligence report said was impossible for a primitive species. Captain, we're receiving data from Probe 7, announced Lieutenant Mark Chen from the communication station. The probe had been shadowing the Valdari fleet for 3 months, sending back detailed information about alien ship movements and tactical formations. Torres moved to the main display where images of the approaching alien fleet filled the screen. 12 massive warships moved through space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the confidence of a species that had never lost a battle. Any changes in their approach? Torres asked. No, sir. Same formation, same speed. They're not, even running active scans. They have no idea we're watching them. Torres nodded grimly. The Valdari arrogance was becoming their weakness. After centuries of easy victories, they had grown careless. They approached Earth like farmers coming to clear a field, not warriors preparing for battle. Down on Earth's surface, the transformation was even more dramatic. Dr. Elena Martinez stood on the observation platform of the Global Defense Center in Colorado, looking out over a landscape that had been completely rebuilt for war. Factories that once made civilian goods now produced weapons and armor. Research facilities that had studied peaceful sciences now focused on military technology. The shield generators are ready for final testing, reported Dr. Sarah Kim over the communication system. She was speaking from a facility in Australia, where teams had spent months perfecting planetary defense systems based on alien technology. Elena watched as the test began. High above Earth's atmosphere, a network of satellites activated simultaneously. Energy barriers appeared in space, creating a protective shell around the planet. The shields were invisible to the naked eye, but sensors showed them clearly. A defensive grid that could stop Valdari plasma weapons. Excellent work, Elena replied. How long can we maintain full shield coverage? 48 hours at maximum power, but we can run reduced coverage for weeks if necessary. The fusion reactors are more efficient than the Valdari designs we copied. Elena smiled. Human engineers had not simply copied alien technology, they had improved it. The same human creativity that had built cities and sent ships to the stars was now focused on survival, and the results were impressive. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Kane studied battle plans with his senior officers. The command center had grown into an underground city, connected by tunnels to similar facilities around the world. Every major nation had contributed their best military minds to the defense of Earth. General Hayes, status report on ground forces, Kane requested. General Robert Hayes stood beside a holographic display showing troop deployments around the globe. 2 million soldiers trained and equipped with alien-based weapons. Another million, in reserve. Every major city has anti-aircraft batteries capable of engaging Valdari fighters. Kane nodded. The ground forces were important, but he knew the real battle would happen in space. If the Valdari fleet reached Earth's surface, the war was already lost. Colonel Blake, what about our orbital defenses? Colonel Sarah Blake highlighted points of light around Earth on the tactical display. 16 battle stations in stable orbit, each armed with plasma cannons and protected by shield generators. Captain Torres reports that our fleet will have 15 ships ready for combat when the Valdari arrive. Kane studied the numbers. 15 human ships against 12 Valdari cruisers. On paper, it seemed like a fair fight. But Kane knew that Valdari ships were larger and had centuries of proven combat experience. The battle would depend on human tactics and the element of surprise. Any word from our long-range reconnaissance? Kane asked. Probe 12 reached the outer system yesterday, Blake reported. The Valdari fleet is maintaining standard approach formation. They're broadcasting standard surrender demands on all frequencies, expecting us to receive and respond with submission. Kane allowed himself a small smile. The Valdari were still following their ancient playbook, treating Earth like every other world they had conquered. They expected humanity to panic, to beg for mercy, to make the conquest easy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the weapon testing facility beneath Nevada, engineer Lisa Park supervised the final trials of humanity's secret weapon. The device looked simple, a metal cylinder about the size of a telephone pole, but it represented months of work by Earth's best scientists. The stealth torpedo is ready for deployment, Lisa announced to the team. Based on Valdari sensor frequencies, it should be completely invisible to their detection systems. Dr. James Cooper examined the weapon's technical specifications. How many can we produce before they arrive? 50, maybe 60 if we push production. Each torpedo carries enough explosive power to cripple a Valdari cruiser. Cooper nodded approvingly. The torpedoes were pure human innovation, designed to exploit weaknesses in alien sensor technology. The Valdari had never faced stealth weapons because no species they conquered had been advanced enough to build them. Above them, in the communication center, Dr. Martinez continued monitoring alien transmissions. The intercepted messages revealed more about Valdari psychology and tactics with each passing day. "They're planning a demonstration bombardment," she reported during the daily briefing. "When they arrive, they intend to destroy one of our major cities as a warning, then demand complete surrender." Kane's face hardened. "Which city?" "The transmissions suggest New York because of its symbolic importance and population density. They want to maximize psychological impact." Kane turned to his staff officers. "Make sure our people know what's coming. When the Valdari arrive, they won't offer terms or negotiation. They plan to start killing humans immediately." The knowledge spread quickly through Earth's military command structure. Any lingering hopes for peaceful resolution disappeared. The Valdari had made their intentions clear: complete extermination of human civilization. This certainty had an unexpected effect on human morale. Instead of despair, it created a cold, focused anger that spread through every level of society. Factory workers built weapons faster. Scientists solved problems more quickly. Soldiers trained harder. Humanity was discovering what they became when faced with an enemy that offered no mercy. Captain Torres received the news while inspecting the newest additions to Earth's fleet. The ships were getting more sophisticated with each design. As human, engineers learned to combine alien technology with their own innovations. "Commander Park, how are the crews adapting to the new systems?" Torres asked his chief engineer. "Better than expected, sir. The combination of alien sensors and human tactical computers gives us advantages the Valdari don't expect. We can see them coming from farther away and coordinate our attacks more precisely." Torres studied the tactical displays showing ship capabilities. Human vessels were smaller than Valdari cruisers, but they were faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, they were designed by humans who understood human psychology and tactics. "The Valdari fight like they expect their enemies to be afraid," Torres observed. "Their ships are built to intimidate. Their tactics are designed to break enemy morale. But they've never fought humans who are already angry." Meanwhile, teams of scientists worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of captured alien technology. Dr. Kim's group had developed personal armor that could protect soldiers in vacuum, allowing boarding actions against alien ships. Cooper's linguistics team had created translation programs that could intercept and decode Valdari communications in real time. But perhaps the most important work was happening in facilities that most humans never saw. Deep underground, teams worked on contingency plans for every possible outcome of the coming battle. If Earth's fleet was destroyed, ground forces would continue fighting. If the orbital defenses failed, cities would resist with guerrilla warfare. If everything else was lost, hidden bases would preserve human knowledge and culture for future generations. The Valdari had planned for a quick, easy conquest. They expected to arrive at a primitive world, broadcast surrender demands, and begin extermination procedures within days. Instead, they were approaching a fortress world where every human was prepared to fight for their species' survival. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, looking out at Earth's defensive preparations. Weapon platforms and shield generators dotted the space around humanity's home world. Warships patrolled in carefully planned formations. Communication arrays maintained contact with reconnaissance probes that watched the approaching enemy. "Sir, latest intelligence from the probe network," Colonel Blake reported. "The Valdari fleet will arrive in exactly the day humanity had been preparing for finally arrived." Admiral Kane stood in the command center of the orbital battle station, watching as 12 massive Valdari warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The alien vessels were enormous, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities, their hulls gleaming with the metallic sheen of advanced technology. "Contact in 6 hours," reported Colonel Blake, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Kane nodded grimly. "Let's hear what they have to say." The alien transmission filled the command center with harsh mechanical sounds that the translation computers quickly converted to human language. The voice that emerged was cold, arrogant, completely without emotion. Primitive inhabitants of Sol 3. You are commanded to surrender immediately. Your species has been selected for termination. Those who comply will be granted swift death. Those who resist will suffer prolonged agony before extermination. You have one of your planetary rotations to respond. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Kane looked around at his officers, seeing the same cold anger in their eyes that he felt in his own chest. Well, he said quietly, they certainly know how to make an impression. Captain Torres spoke from the bridge of the human flagship, his voice crackling over the communication system. Admiral, the fleet is in position. All ships report ready for combat. Kane studied the tactical display showing the positions of both fleets. The Valdari maintained their traditional formation, 12 ships arranged in a pattern that had intimidated countless civilizations. The human fleet was scattered throughout the solar system, hidden behind asteroids and moons, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Remember the plan, Kane broadcast to all human forces. They expect us to meet them in open battle, ship to ship, following their rules. Instead, we're going to show them what happens when they fight humans. The Valdari fleet moved toward Earth, with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Their ships were beautiful in their way, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that had destroyed dozens of worlds. But as they approached the inner solar system, something began to go wrong. The first sign of trouble came from the Valdari flagship. Commander Thex, the alien leader, watched his sensors with growing confusion. The primitive world ahead showed none of the panic and chaos his intelligence reports had predicted. Instead, the electromagnetic signatures suggested massive industrial activity and coordinated military movements. Navigation, are you certain these are the correct coordinates? Thex demanded. Yes, Commander. This is Sol 3, the primitive world marked for cleansing. Thex studied the sensor readings more carefully. The planet below showed energy signatures that seemed almost familiar, as if the inhabitants were using technology similar to Valdari systems. Impossible, he muttered. These creatures are centuries away from such advancement. He was about to order a detailed scan when the first human attack began. Lisa Park's stealth torpedoes struck without warning. The weapons had been drifting in space for weeks, powered down and invisible to Valdari sensors. When they received the attack signal, they activated simultaneously and accelerated toward the alien fleet. The first torpedo struck the Valdari cruiser on the fleet's left flank. The explosion lit up space like a small star, and the massive alien ship lurched sideways, its shields failing under the unexpected assault. Before the Valdari could react, 11 more torpedoes found their targets. Direct hits on 8 ships, reported Torres from the flagship. 3 Valdari cruisers are badly damaged. The others are recovering, but their formations are broken. Kane smiled grimly. The stealth attack had worked perfectly, but it was only the beginning. All ships, execute attack pattern Alpha. Show them what human engineering can do. The human fleet emerged from hiding like wolves attacking a herd. 15 warships, each one smaller than the Valdari cruisers but faster and more maneuverable, swept in from multiple directions. The aliens, still reeling from the torpedo attack, tried to reform their battle lines. But Captain Torres had studied Valdari tactics for months. He knew exactly how they would respond to the attack, and he was ready for them. Focus fire on the command ship, Torres ordered. If we can take out their leadership, the rest of the fleet will struggle to coordinate. The human ships moved with precision that shocked the Valdari commanders. Instead of the chaotic, panicked resistance they expected from a primitive species, they faced coordinated attacks that seemed to anticipate their every move. Commander Thex watched in growing horror as his fleet was torn apart by ships that should have been no match for Valdari technology. The human vessels used weapons that looked like Valdari designs, but fired faster and hit harder. Their shields deflected, plasma blasts that should have destroyed them instantly. How are they doing this? Thex demanded of his tactical officer. Unknown, Commander. Their technology appears to be based on our own designs, but with modifications we don't understand. The truth was simple, but devastating. Human engineers had taken Valdari technology and improved it with human creativity and ingenuity. The aliens had given humanity the tools to destroy them, and humans had made those tools better. The battle raged for 2 hours. The Valdari ships were powerful, but they were designed for intimidation and overwhelming firepower against helpless targets. The human fleet was built for war against a superior enemy, and every ship had been crafted with deadly efficiency. General Hayes watched the space battle from the command bunker beneath Colorado, coordinating the planetary defense systems. When 3 damaged Valdari ships broke away from the main battle and headed for Earth, he was ready. "Activate the orbital defense grid," he ordered. The space around Earth lit up with energy as 16 battle stations opened fire simultaneously. The approaching Valdari ships found themselves caught in a crossfire of plasma beams and missile salvos. Their shields, already weakened by the earlier battle, began to fail under the concentrated assault. "Sir, one of the alien ships is trying to reach the surface," reported Colonel Blake. Hayes studied the tactical display. The damaged Valdari cruiser was diving toward Earth's atmosphere, probably hoping to crash land and establish a ground base. It was exactly what human forces had been preparing for. "Let them come," Hayes said calmly. "We have a welcoming committee ready." The alien ship broke through Earth's atmosphere, trailing fire and smoke. Its crew, desperate and angry, managed to land in a remote area of Australia. Within minutes, they were transmitting distress signals to the rest of their fleet. But the humans had been listening. Dr. Martinez and her team had broken the Valdari communication codes months ago, and they knew exactly what the aliens were planning. "They're requesting immediate reinforcement," Martinez reported. "They want the main fleet to abandon the space battle and attack Earth directly." Admiral Kane smiled coldly. "Perfect. Signal all ships to fall back to Earth orbit. Make it look like we're retreating." The Valdari fleet, seeing the human ships withdraw, interpreted it as a sign of weakness. Commander Thex, his own ship badly damaged but still functional, ordered his remaining 8 cruisers to pursue the retreating humans. It was exactly what Kane had hoped for. As the Valdari fleet entered Earth's orbital space, they found themselves surrounded. The human ships that had appeared to retreat were actually taking up predetermined positions. The orbital defense stations powered up their weapons, and from the surface of Earth, thousands of ground-based weapon systems targeted the alien fleet. "Fire, everything," Kane ordered. The combined firepower of humanity's entire military struck the Valdari fleet simultaneously. Plasma beams, missile salvos, and energy weapons lit up the space around Earth like a deadly fireworks display. The alien ships, caught in the middle of the defensive grid, found themselves under attack from every direction. Commander Thex realized, too late, that he had led his fleet into a trap. The primitive species he had come to exterminate had somehow turned his own technology against him. His ships were being destroyed by weapons that used Valdari designs, but fired with human precision and coordination. "All ships retreat to hyperspace," he ordered desperately. But the humans had planned for this too. Commander David Park, leading a squadron of the fastest human ships, had been waiting for exactly this moment. His vessels moved to block the Valdari escape routes, engaging the alien ships in close combat. "No one leaves," Park broadcast to his pilots. "Not one alien ship returns to tell their empire where Earth is located." The final phase of the battle was swift and brutal. The Valdari ships, designed for conquering helpless civilizations, were no match for human warships built specifically to kill aliens. One by one, the mighty cruisers were destroyed or disabled. When the last Valdari ship fell silent, Kane looked around the command center at his officers. Earth's sky was filled with the wreckage of alien vessels, but not a single human ship had been lost. "Casualties?" he asked. "Minimal, sir. The Valdari never had a chance to attack our cities or population centers." Kane nodded slowly. The battle was over, but he knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Valdari Empire was waiting for news of their fleet's easy victory. When that news never came, they would eventually send more ships to Eye. 3 months after the battle, Admiral Kane stood in the interrogation chamber deep beneath the Global Defense Center. Across from him sat Commander Thex, the highest-ranking Valdari survivor from the destroyed fleet. The alien was tall and lean, with silver skin and dark eyes that had once looked upon dozens of conquered worlds. Now those eyes showed something they had never held before: fear. "Your empire will send more ships," Thex said in broken human language, his voice carrying the arrogance that came from centuries of easy victories. "You cannot defeat the full might of the Valdari." Kane leaned back in his chair, studying the alien commander with calm interest. "Tell me about your empire, Commander. How many worlds have you conquered?" 47 systems bow before Valdari might," Thex replied with pride. "Your primitive species will be the 48th. "And how many of those worlds fought back?" Thex paused, confusion crossing his features. "None fought back. Resistance is pointless against superior technology." Kane smiled coldly. "That's your problem, Commander. You've spent so long bullying helpless civilizations that you forgot what happens when you face someone who can fight back." Dr. Elena Martinez entered the chamber carrying a datapad filled with intelligence gathered from captured Valdari ships. The information had been a treasure trove, revealing not just military secrets, but the entire structure of the alien empire. "Admiral, we've finished analyzing their star charts," she reported. "The Valdari Empire controls 47 systems, but their military is spread thin. Most of their conquered worlds are kept in line by small garrison forces." Kane nodded, his plan taking shape. "What about their home system?" 3 heavily defended worlds, but the bulk of their fleet is scattered across the Empire, maintaining control. "And sir, there's something else. The Valdari have never lost a fleet. Never. When our 12 ships don't return, their empire will want to know why." Commander Thex listened to this exchange with growing alarm. These humans were not simply defending themselves, they were planning something far more dangerous. Meanwhile, in the orbital shipyards above Earth, Captain Torres supervised the construction of humanity's most ambitious project yet. The new ships being built were not copies of Valdari designs, but purely human creations that incorporated the best of both technologies. "The stealth cruiser is ready for trials," reported Commander Park. From the test vessel's bridge, the ship was sleek and deadly, designed to be invisible to Valdari sensors while carrying enough firepower to destroy anything it encountered. Torres smiled as he watched the ship maneuver through space. Human engineers had surpassed their alien teachers, creating vessels that were faster, more powerful, and far more dangerous than anything the Valdari had ever built. "How many are ready for deployment?" Torres asked. 6 stealth cruisers, 12 assault ships, and 20 fighter squadrons, all equipped with the new plasma weapons and shield systems. Torres nodded with satisfaction. The fleet was small compared to the massive Valdari armadas, but it was designed for a specific mission that had nothing to do with defense. In the Strategic Planning Center, General Hayes spread star charts across the holographic display, showing the locations of Valdari military bases and garrison worlds. The captured alien databases had provided humanity with detailed intelligence about their enemy's empire. "The Valdari maintain control through fear," Hayes explained to his staff officers. "Small forces on each conquered world, backed up by the threat of overwhelming retaliation if anyone rebels. But what happens when that fear is removed?" Colonel E. Blake studied the tactical information. "You're suggesting we attack their garrison worlds?" "Not attack," Hayes corrected. "Liberate. Every world the Valdari conquered by force can be freed the same way. And when those worlds see that the mighty Valdari can be defeated, the entire empire will start to crumble." Kane entered the planning session, having finished his interrogation of the alien commander. Thex confirmed what we suspected. The Valdari empire is built on a foundation of terror and intimidation. They rule through fear because they've never faced serious resistance. "What about their homeworlds?" asked General Hayes. "Heavily defended but isolated. If we can cut off their outer territories, the core worlds will be surrounded by free systems that hate them." Kane smiled grimly. "The Valdari made their empire by crushing hope. We're going to give that hope back." Dr. Cooper's linguistics team had been working around the clock to understand not just Valdari language, but the languages of the species they had conquered. The captured databases contained communication records from dozens of different civilizations, all silenced by Valdari conquest. "We can communicate with the conquered populations," Cooper reported during the daily briefing. "Most of the worlds were attacked recently enough that survivors still remember their freedom." Kane nodded approvingly. "Perfect. We'll need to coordinate with local resistance movements when we begin operations." The plan that emerged from weeks of careful preparation was audacious in its scope. Humanity would not simply defend Earth and hope to be left alone. Instead, they would take the war directly to the Valdari Empire, using the aliens' own arrogance and rigid military doctrine against them. 2 months later, the first phase of humanity's counterattack began. 6 stealth cruisers invisible to Valdari sensors and armed with weapons that could destroy alien ships with a single shot slipped quietly through hyperspace toward their targets. Captain Torres commanded the lead ship, watching as they approached, the Valdari garrison world of Kepler 442b. The planet had been conquered only 5 years earlier, and intelligence suggested that a significant resistance movement still operated in the mountains. "Take us in quietly," Torres ordered. "I want to be in orbit before they know we're here." The human ships materialized in the planet's orbital space, like ghosts, their stealth systems keeping them hidden from Valdari sensors. Below them, the alien garrison consisted of 2 medium cruisers and a planetary defense grid that had seemed invincible to the conquered population. It lasted exactly 17 minutes. The stealth cruisers opened fire with precise, coordinated strikes that destroyed the Valdari ships before they could raise shields or return fire. The planetary defense systems, designed to prevent primitive species from escaping, were helpless against human weapons that struck from impossible angles. As the last Valdari installation exploded, Torres broadcast a message to the planet's surface, in the local language that Dr. Cooper's team had provided. "People of Kepler 442b, this is Captain Torres of the human fleet. The Valdari who enslaved your world are dead. You are free. Humanity stands with all species who choose freedom over tyranny." The response from the planet's surface was immediate and overwhelming. Resistance fighters who had hidden in caves for 5 years emerged to celebrate their liberation. The Valdari garrison that had seemed so powerful was nothing but burning wreckage in orbit. Similar scenes played out across 6 different worlds as human strike teams eliminated Valdari garrisons with surgical precision. The aliens' rigid military doctrine, designed for intimidating helpless civilians, proved useless against human tactics that emphasized speed, stealth, and overwhelming firepower at the point of attack. But the real message came when the human fleet reached the Valdari border world of Proxima Centauri b, a heavily fortified system that served as a major military base for the alien empire. The space around the planet bristled with defensive stations and patrol ships. It was the kind of stronghold that had never been successfully attacked in centuries of Valdari expansion. The alien commanders stationed there considered their position impregnable. They were wrong. The human assault fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships gleaming with the deadly beauty of weapons designed by a species that had learned to turn alien technology into something far more dangerous. The Valdari defenders, confident in their superior numbers and firepower, moved to intercept what they assumed was a desperate attack by primitive humans. The battle was over in 4 hours. Human ships, smaller and faster than their alien counterparts, danced through the Valdari formations like predators among prey. Every human captain had studied alien tactics for months, learning to anticipate and counter every standard Valdari maneuver. When the last defensive station fell silent, Admiral Kane's voice echoed across all Valdari communication frequencies throughout the system. "This is Admiral Kane of the human fleet. You came to our world to exterminate us because you thought we were weak and helpless. You were wrong. We are not the primitive species you believed us to be. We are survivors who have fought for 10,000 years to reach the stars, and we will not be pushed back into the darkness." Kane paused, letting his words sink in to every Valdari listener. "Every world you have conquered will be freed. Every species you have enslaved will know that the mighty Valdari can be defeated. Your empire was built on fear and intimidation, but today that fear dies. Any species that threatens human existence will learn what we learned long ago on our own world. That freedom is worth any price, and that some species would rather die fighting than live as slaves. The message was broadcast throughout Valdari, space, carrying with it footage of the destroyed fleet and liberated worlds. For the first time in centuries, the conquered populations of the